Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. I love having Ryan Singer on my podcast. We should do it more. I say that, and it's my own fault. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Join the Patreon, folks. There's a lot going on, whether it's mine or Ryan's, or join someone's Patreon. Anyone's. Just join a Patreon.
Yeah, I mean, we should just, at this point, we should just do a podcast.
Yeah, I know. Well,
I mean, I think that would be fun. I mean, it's funny because I've been looking through, excuse me, I've been editing a lot of video footage from the Post-Town investigation. And I've got like the first episode done. I'm working on the second episode right now. And so I've been going through a lot of the footage. So I've been seeing a lot of these last few days. And I think the third episode is going to have our sequence with the walkthrough with Courage.
Courage, wow.
Which I'm excited to piece together. But so, I mean, I've had that thought like many times. I'm like, oh, Karen and I should just do a podcast together. We've talked about it before.
We should do a podcast or whatever. Yeah, I'm up for anything with you because I think we are great together. We're both comedians. We're just set for something. So I'm just opening up, saying yes to whatever, and you let me know. That's how I'm so, well, I spent the last 24 hours. I found a dog, a homeless lady found a dog. I had to kind of get the dog from her and then find the owner up here in upstate New York. And so I'm a little exhausted, but I did find the owner and they were very happy. And and Courage is gone. So it was really nice to have a dog over for like a one night stand. And so now I'm tired. And you were like, I'm dog sitting right now. So we're all surrounded by dogs.
Yeah, I'm dog sitting this little heartthrob named Charlie. He's a little Chihuahua. Oh. And it took him about a day to warm up, but ever since then he's been a total barnacle.
Yeah, that's Chihuahuas are like that. It's really cute. You look on other people, you're like, that's kind of clingy, and then when it happens to you, you're like, that's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. It's nice to have the undying love of another creature. That is, totally, there's very few things you can do outside of being a monster to make a dog no longer love you, I would imagine.
Yeah. And they're fuzzy. And that's,
yes.
And I always say when I talk to people and I'm like, I say your guides might not look like, I ask them to be represented as people because they might not look like what you think, like the archangels. And I always go, if you didn't know what a dog looked like and someone described it, well, it's covered in hair and it has like a long snout with a lot of teeth, you'd be like, oh my God, what is that? But then once there's no getting around. Ugly dogs are cute. They're all cute.
Yeah, I feel like so many things are like that. Like what you just described. Peanut butter would probably be my number one thing. It's like, oh, this is this brown goo that kind of looks like poop and it's so delicious. You put it on bread. I'd just be like, please don't ever talk to me about this peanut butter again.
I know. Oh, that's hysterical. I'm trying to think. I know there's this lady that does on TikTok. She does like what people around the world put in oatmeal. And it'll be like people from whoever. Some people put like fish in oatmeal. Like, oh, that's the best when you put fish in your oatmeal. And there's always one out of whatever 5 countries where you go, oh my God, what's wrong with those people? But we were talking before we even started about how 2022 is, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I know I kind of turned my whole life upside down and then Courage was gone and I'm in a different place doing different things and fighting different fights. But time is just brutal this year, isn't it?
Yes. Welcome to the new world. The new world is not something that I think it's not something I was anticipating necessarily. Personal change is always it's always difficult when you trunk it inside of a major world shift as well. So you're like adjusting on all these different levels, and it's difficult to keep our hands on all the different knobs simultaneously. I feel like so. I do feel like I'm trying really hard to give myself a break on the knob adjustment because I've only got so many mystical hands that I can operate this board. So I'm trying to take it one knob at a time, if that makes sense. And I think right now for me specifically, it's like a personal knob that I'm really trying to focus my adjustments on. While keeping an eye on the world knob. But I mean, and it's only been escalating for years, the last 5-10 years anyway. I mean, we can talk about the escalation of the paranormal and mystical and supernatural as well. I mean, how it's really bled into the mainstream at this point, in a way that it was not like this 10 years ago. But even so, there's been an escalation, I believe, on everything else. And I think that's due to people's perceptions widening, and I believe their sensitivities increasing as well. So there's always been escalation, I suppose, throughout the history of time. But I just don't think collectively everyone has been as sensitive to it as they are now, which I think is a good thing. But at the same time, it comes with its downfalls, being overwhelmed, feeling extreme anxiety, which I've had a ton of anxiety these last couple of years, and and I fall out of practices that are good for controlling that and tempering it, due to being super busy or some other strange reason. And the expectation for perfection is, really, it's really exhausting, and I believe we have that as a society in so many ways. We can see that play out in so many different ways. I know the left, which, most people who really know me would probably consider me borderline communist, but I'm very socialist in the way I do things. And the expectation of perfection is very systemic and problematic in the world of the left, which I think is a fair criticism. When you want to talk politics and all that other kind of stuff and social issues, the expectation for perfection is something that we hold other people to while not, applying it to ourselves. I mean, it's unattainable. So
yeah. And I think it's kind of funny because first of all, someone needs to go back and write out the whole knob thing that you started with, because it was great. Like, someone write that into a song. You have such a way with words. It's like, it's crazy. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is, I feel like there's also a strange, like, especially in my life, and I have a lot of clients that I feel the same, is there's sort of an identity crisis going on right now for each person. Like, I know I'm not out of comedy, but because I moved up here, comedy is not right in front of me. And I have to kind of ask that question, well, who are you if you're not a comedian 24/7? Or also, I think moving out here, I know there's certain things to it, but the perfectionism thing is strange because it's also, if you're in Hollywood, it's a moving target. Like, what are you supposed to be now? But I think the perfectionism trap is probably ruins most people and most careers.
Yeah, for sure. And I understand the identity crisis thing as well, pretty deeply, just considering what you said, because Hollywood is all about identity and perception. What's your brand, as opposed to what can you do or what are you really good at? And I think the shift towards being so hyper focused on branding as opposed to the pursuit of craft and the pursuit of art is, to me, it's poisonous, and I have fought hard against, being sucked into the stream of, promote your brand, and, to the detriment of maybe my career financially. And, but at the end of the day, I try to remember that, like, we're all inside of a system, and there's all different kinds of systems. And the system has a profound effect on the people operating with inside of it over time. And the longer you're inside of a system, the longer it affects you. And the Hollywood system or the showbiz system is very specific in the way it acts upon the people that are, operating with inside of it. And if we can remember who we are and, who we strive to be, even while operating with inside that system, I think it behooves us to do so, to keep certain things in mind that are untenable as far as, things you'll do, things you're willing to do. I mean, I think a good example would be, and not to get too specific, but let's say, you have a career opportunity, or you have an opportunity that will bolster your career beyond anything that's bolstered it before. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the choice that the universe can kind of present to certain people. And it's like, okay, so now you have to figure out what's really important to you. Is your, eternal happiness and evolution towards becoming a being of light, or, if that's your goal, is that the most important thing, or is being able to pay your rent right now more important than your long-term evolution? Mm-hmm. And that's a very difficult question to answer sometimes when there's people in your life that have expectations of you to contribute your part to a relationship, to not feel like you're a burden to other people. Do you go on, like, let's say, this specific podcast that you might be diametrically opposed to a lot of the things that they promote, but that there are probably people out there listening to that would really understand where you come from, so it's one of those dicey things. And in the past, I've always been like, well, I'm going to kind of try to stick to my guns the best I can. I don't need promotion at the sake of compromise necessarily. People in showbiz don't necessarily love that when you like are, shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak, or like a commercial agent. I always turn down any kind of, for the most part, at least in the past, I would turn down, like, I didn't want to be in a McDonald's commercial, right? Mm-hmm. And, or promoting something or being a part of something that promotes, true unhealthiness and like people's like diet, or lifestyle kind of
mm-hmm.
thing. And so it's like, well, most commercials are, fast food commercials, beer commercials, things like that. So it's just like, well, what do you want to, those commercials would have been great. I've never turned one down, by the way. I've never been like, no, I'm not going to do it. Like when it was off, like if it was like actually offered to me, just to be clear here, but I don't know. It's tough to keep in mind sometimes.
It is. It always amazes me because I am, everybody knows I got the animal rights thing going on. I'm vegan. I don't care what anyone else is. You guys do your thing. I'll do mine. And I don't push it, but the only place that I do push is like makeup. And L'Oreal is like the worst on animal testing. And every time I see a famous actress like thrilled to do a L'Oreal thing, my brain always goes, did they ask? Or were they coerced by their manager or their agent? I'll never forget when Byron Allen was doing all those shows, and one of the shows was, do you want to date a comedian? And I said, no, I don't want to do that show. And I remember it was a weird time because my mom had cancer and I was away at this yoga retreat. So all these things are crashing in at once. And the manager told them yes. And literally called me and said, like, Saturday, you have to be here for this show. And I did it. It was fine. It's no big deal. It plays at like 3 a.m. or something. And I think it was actually somewhat funny. But there's always that part of me that was like, why did you go? Why didn't you tell her to take a leap? Why did you go? Because we always assume that these people, or when we were younger, we assume these people know what we have to do. And then as you get older, you go, these people don't know anything more than us.
Yes, exactly. And I also do my damnedest, even though I fail constantly and miserably at this, but I do my damnedest to be like, well, guess what? Not everybody wants to live their life like you.
Yeah.
And so that's the hardest part about, I mean, I know coming up in comedy was this way for me until like one day I just kind of like through the help of other people and myself, I realized, well, just because I came up in comedy a certain way, and we all think the way we do something is the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone else is doing things and they're not doing them the way we did them, it's easy for us to be like, you know what, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
You're going about this all wrong. You don't appreciate or respect this thing the way I do.
Mm-hmm.
A perfect example would be like you people who, comedians who got famous from YouTube. And it's like, you're not a real comedian unless you're on stage behind a microphone in front of living people. And I'm not going to say I don't still kind of hold on to that. I mean, if you want to be a stand-up comedian, yes, you have to perform stand-up comedy live.
Yeah.
And the pandemic tried to make us readjust that even belief about performing in front of people in a space together. But so that's where judgment really falls in, and it's like, that's where we open ourselves up to be just a judgy bastard.
Yeah.
When we start to, believe that, we did things, the way we did them were right. And if you're not doing them that way, you're wrong. And I mean, I feel like it's that way in the world of paranormal. Certain investigators have that perception as well. Like if you didn't, so you've been doing TikTok videos for 3 months and have 200,000 followers because you were already kind of famous beforehand and now you're a paranormal investigator. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. The paranormal community is worse about that. The funny thing with the comedians too is I have this a little bit. I'll never forget when Kelsey Grammer won an Emmy, and he got on stage and he said, "Oh, this time I thought I was a dramatic actor, and it turns out I'm a comedian." And I kind of winced, like, you're a comedic actor, but you're not one of us. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think my friend Jimmy said this the other day perfectly. Is he said, "There's funny around your friends. There's funny around your crowd. And then there's the top tier, which is drop me anywhere and can I make people that don't know me laugh?" And I do cling to that. It doesn't bother me too much, the YouTubers getting the attention, but some people really, really hate that. But the paranormal community it's almost like, it's funny because paranormal community is a new community. That wasn't anything before. And then all of a sudden there were like these unspoken rules. Like I remember a couple of paranormal conventions that Dave Schrader had recommended me to or something. And I remember calling the woman and she said, "Oh, well, we have a paranormal comedian already." Like she said it like that. And then I was like, "Oh, who is it?" Because everybody goes Scott Griswold, who's a friend of mine. And she goes, "He was the sound man at Zany's." And I was like, "Oh, well, ask him if he knows me because I work there." You know what I mean? But it was like this, don't call me because we've already filled that slot and we don't have room for any more. And even I love that. I kind of love that show, Paranormal Caught on Tape, but half of them are not real. But I know if you say that's not real, if you're one of those people they're interviewing, you're not on. You got to say what you think, why that's real. It's, and they're doing it probably to promote themselves, which is okay. I don't want to stand in their way. Nobody's judging. I mean, but you're right. It's almost worse than comedy, I think, in the paranormal.
Yeah. I mean, I've been, I guess, lucky enough to where, I've kind of just I just don't pay attention to, I guess, a lot of that. And I think it's because of we have the luxury, and I think that's important to keep in mind too, like, to be a comedian or for people to believe you are a comedian, they don't, maybe it's changed now, but, they just don't meet a lot of the person who's living, a different life. It's not that often that they come in contact with someone who does this for a living. So it is special. And I mean, I think that's why a lot of us wanted to get into it, is because we realized it was special and we wanted to see if we were able to be special. And I don't know. I'm not over here saying that we're more special than other people. That's definitely not what I'm trying to say.
We chose something, maybe even the word isn't special. We chose one of the hardest things you can do. And we went out on a limb and did it. I'll tell you a couple of things which is first of all, let's take a break, and then I'm going to tell you what I like about you.
Okay,
hang folks, we'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and Prithvika is my collection of consciously created crystal and nature forged jewelry. Prithvika translates to of the earth in Hindi, which represents the natural earth-made materials I'm working with, along with my personal ancestry and grounded energy. Each piece is created through ceremony and science, and completed with being Reiki charged. I'm currently featuring copper mirror necklaces, which can be used for protection and mirror magic. My intention is for your new piece of jewelry to feel like an extension of self, to help bring your desires to fruition and to amplify the magic within you. My Instagram is @Prithvika, and my website is prithvika.com. That's PRTHVEEKA.com.
Okay, so I know we're sort of off on a weird shoot here, but I think so. I am here in Utica, and we're kind of holding writing classes where I'm helping the local comics, and they're really funny people, but they to just help them out and go, this is how you do it your way, or give them guidelines, or this is how you write this kind of joke or whatever. But the first thing I said to them all was, what is your goal? Do you want to be on a Netflix special? Do you want to be on a sitcom? Do you want to be on Saturday Night Live? And no one had an answer. The room went silent, and this sounds terrible, but like they didn't even know what to hope for. And then it kind of got around, and as we started writing more, I know what I want to do. I want to do this, which was great. But here's what so being that we're in comedy, we can separate from the paranormal world. We can go into a club and tell paranormal jokes, and we don't have to be. I learned a long time ago that these paranormal conventions do nothing for you. That is, you're just talking to a small crowd of people that might get an inside joke. It does nothing for your career. But you have, because I've always thought my problem, which probably still is I don't go that far out on the skinny branches. Like when I got Letterman, one day I sent a tape, like on a whim, I sent a tape, and it just happened. But you sort of do these things that I feel like you went out and did the Post Town thing, and I was like, wow, man, he just is like, that's what I'm doing. The money falls into place or falls behind. And it's like, that's what I so admire about how you cut your own path. And then you'll be like, yeah, I'm going to that club and I'm doing a one-nighter there. I have my crowd is coming in. And I always felt like, just keep working and something will happen. And if I could go back, the only thing I would do would be audition more, go out on a limb more, take more chances. So anyways, that's where I really think everything, I think you just do great with that. And I was so really happy and flattered to be a part of the Post Town thing, which still freaks me out.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I feel like I don't go out on a limb enough, over here, but because I have the same fears a lot of people have about, becoming vulnerable in certain things, or, are people going to like this? And have I done everything all wrong?
If you're not out on a limb, then I'm on the stump, because I feel like you're like, wow, he just gathered everyone and did it. That's how you do it. How did you miss that, Karen? You just gather people and do it. And I can't.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's. We all want more, right? I think that's part of like the drive, but because we have you and I both have contemporaries that have just kind of exploded into the universe, and And people that we even kind of know on a cursory level will be like, oh, so you know this person? And they're like shocked that you know this person. It's like, well, yeah, I know that idiot. You know what I mean? Like, we're all just idiots.
Yeah.
We all kind of just known them for a really long time. They're a doofus.
Yeah.
I know them. But, and it's,
he owes me $50. That guy owes me $50.
I mean, I have like one of my really successful friends does still owe me like $150. And the only reason I remember that is because I could use $150,
Yeah.
which says a lot more about where I'm at than where they're at. But, it's freeing in a way to like not have a goal, like you were talking about when it comes to these local comics in Utica.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that in a way to where it's like they're just doing it for the love of the game. And I think as long as we can hold on to at least some part of that, long term, it's important. But when you make the decision to pursue as a life, one of these things, and I think I would argue it's probably easier to make a life. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but it's probably easier to make a life for yourself in comedy than paranormal. Just because of the foundation that's been there for a lot longer.
And business wise, paranormal really, it's pretty much geared toward TV. And whenever there's gatekeepers, you have to please the gatekeepers. And I feel like in comedy, if you get that 100 million followers, you're the gatekeeper then.
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think with the world that we live in and the way things are trending and the way things are going, for me, I feel like it's impossible to predict anything outside of, I'm going to hopefully wake up tomorrow. And, I have no idea what, when it comes to like, here's the thing that's on the side of the paranormal, like on a positive way, when it comes to trying to get more awareness about it or get more people to be open to believing in certain things, is I think that, the world has definitely trended in the last couple of years to where like people can no longer be so shocked and just be like, I cannot believe this happened. So many like unbelievable things across the spectrum of everything have been occurring in the last few years, that when it comes to being shocked by like, wow, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe that this thing is real that I'm experiencing right now. That has, I think the scope of what would be classified as totally unbelievable and never could happen has shrunk dramatically.
Yes.
And I think that's because the world is blasting open for whatever reason. And I really don't know why. Part of me likes to just kind of think about like, think back to that 2012 Mayan calendar time and how, maybe something did happen in 2012. And, we just live in this world of instant gratification and short attention spans that will look back and realize many, many years from now that, 2012 was like a year where everything really started to blast open. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. That's just me being, whimsical, I suppose.
No, I get it. And I also feel like if you were at all on the paranormal route or the metaphysical route, or even just really open to it, if you look at where you were then and where you are now, like I could look at my readings, or I really, Carolyn Miss, who I'm just quoting her all the time, and this is one of the biggest things in her class that I'm taking, is she said the Egyptians were energy people that moved into density over time, and we are density people moving into energy. And this would just be my life, I think, but I could not agree with that more, because I feel like before, when you try to manifest something, maybe I got better at it, but I mean, I remember trying to make things happen sort of energetically, and nothing ever happened. And lately, it's kind of like sometimes I hear messages that I asked the universe answered in a day. Like something can change. And I don't know always how to hold on to that. It's funny because with comedy here, I said, I have a text group, and it's 3 of us, and we text jokes back every day just to make sure we're all writing. And the guy in the group just won his 3rd Emmy, and the girl was writing on the Academy Awards. And I'm kind of in Utica going, what am I doing? And I realized, just dump all of that. What if you just are going to figure you're performing next week and the week after? And nothing changed. We all got up and we do our jokes every day to make sure we're writing. So that sometimes makes me sad, and then sometimes it makes me really happy. But I mean, it's like when I moved here and I was like, you got to get work, you got to find those clubs, you got to break open the East Coast, and nothing was happening. And then in my head, I heard sit back and receive, and all that energy changed. And like 5 people called me that day. And so I feel like that, if I don't know, maybe other people had better luck, but I remember when The Secret came out and I was like, no, that's not it. That's not it. And these things, and they just weren't working. And I was like, that's not it. And now I feel like those things really became alive. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think, therefore I am is a famous quote. And as the years go by, I become more and more baffled by seemingly how profound that thought about having a thought becoming real truly is, considering everything around us in the world that we see outside of nature itself. And even nature, I suppose, in some way, because I do consider myself lately as an idealist in the, I guess, philosophical way, meaning that consciousness is the foundation of all things around us, and everything else, everything physical, material, everything else is built on top of this foundation of consciousness. And it's all a perception, right? So, which is, in direct contrast to like, a physicalist or a materialist. And, I think through diving deep into the paranormal, plus, which was layered on top of, a deep interest in philosophy and all those other kinds of, esoteric things, even before that, I've come into this place where now I realize, I'm this physical being, and there's certain things that I really want, and there's certain things that I really tried to manifest, and they've just never happened. And why is that? And is it because I'm just not good at it? Or is it because somewhere deep down in my consciousness, I realize, without knowing it, that I don't need this. This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing, or this isn't where I'm supposed to be going. And it's hard to surrender to the idea of whatever happened because it was supposed to happen because it happened.
Yes.
Because sometimes that's just like, man, this is brutal stuff. I don't want this to be happening. And, so it's tough to surrender and accept that. And I don't think that's a great way to, project a way of life onto other people, because, there's other people who have suffered horrendous things at the hands of other people. And you can't just sit back and say to them, well, everything happens because it was supposed to happen, and that's why it happened. That's a dangerous thing to do onto other people, because I believe this is specifically something a person must come to themselves and believe in. It's not something that anyone else can ever tell someone else is the way of the universe and the way of existence.
Yeah.
That's not, I mean, it goes contrary against, the idea of the whole thing itself, in my opinion. But, because it's, because there's, a phrase now going around called spiritual abuse. And a friend of mine who I went to high school with, she's one of the most brilliant people I've ever known. She was actually in a cult for a little while. Her and her husband broke free from this cult from dumb luck, from pure luck. They had to leave the compound to go get supplies one day because of some flooding. And when they were out getting supplies because of the damage and everything that happened because of a flood, they both had this moment of like, whoa, when's the last time we've been out? What is going on? What have we been doing this last, period of time? Holy smokes, we're in a cult.
Wow.
We're not going back. Right. And she literally is probably the most intelligent, brilliant, one of the most brilliant people as far as intelligence goes that I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, she just got a PhD, and, her focus is on, spiritual abuse and things like that because of her experience in this cult. And you can't tell someone that like, oh yeah, this person, suffered these things because that's what they chose before they were born. This was the path that they chose to be on, blah, 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 things like that. So, that's something that a person gets to decide for themselves, I think. And because that's what they think. If that's what they begin to believe and think, if the foundation of all reality is consciousness and stemming from that is thought, then yes, that's their world now. But if it's not what they think, guess what? It's not their world.
I think you're right. And I think there's different timelines, and I think there's different ways that this goes. Like a lot of times when people call me for readings, this has been coming up a lot lately, is I pardon all the motorcycles and whatever in the background. Who would have thought I moved to where there's like 1/100th of the people in LA, but they all ride motorcycles, all of them, right by my window. There is and I think there are certain things that are bullet points, and I think there are certain things that we manifest. And I also think what we are doing between the bullet points, like let's say you and I are supposed to have a hit show and it's going to happen in 5 years. So it's like, do we sit and do nothing, or do we have fun and investigate and just do our own thing for the next 5 years? Like, how do you get there so that we would choose to, we are choosing to educate ourselves. So if we ever got a TV show or we ever did something like that, we'd have a background. We wouldn't be scrambling. So how do you get there? But I have noticed, I think there's certain things in life, like when someone is picking the same partner over and over and over, making the same mistake over and over and over. And I know when I do the same thing, you did it again. That is the part where we can change that manifestation. In fact, weird thing, I'm doing an advanced tarot class, but it's not about tarot. It's about how the major arcana actually was made to change the way you think through every part of your body, to reprogram the subconscious. But that doesn't, even reprogramming the subconscious, that doesn't mean that Tony Robbins hasn't had a bad day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
heavy human. Lifting.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
That's some really heavy lifting stuff when you start getting into the archetypes that are buried in our subconscious, like the lizards that break from the shells on the beach, and they just instinctually know to run towards the water to get out of the way of the birds, the turtles, or the lizards or something, and they have to get away from the snakes that are just waiting there for them because they know that's what happens there. Because the snakes are also just born with something that knows, okay, well, a bunch of our food comes out of the ground right here at this time of year, so we're going to be over there. Meanwhile, these creatures hatch from their shells, and and they make for I think it is lizards, and they make for the water because that's where they know it's safe. So I feel like
there's no reason.
Yeah,
for
that was
motorcycle to do that. I hate that person, and they ride up and down the street all day. Okay,
it's like, so what are these inherited memories? And there's the last few years, there's been a lot of talk of generational trauma being proven to be a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is an inherited intelligence of information that is born into the human brain, or where it's stored upon birth, that we also get, much like these other animals that are just born with certain knowledge, right? And
mm-hmm.
I think the last few years, you see people really trying their damnedest to tap into that knowledge, and then what you have as a result is, some people call it like the mass awakening. There's all kinds of the shift. There's all kinds of names for it, and I'm not saying that it's all the same thing with different names, but I do believe that birds of a feather flock together in this kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what is the end result of truly a mass awakening? Well, first of all, I think it's going to be brutal
mm-hmm.
at first. And much like any major change that happens, there's pushback, there's comfortability and knowing what was before and having that as a stable footing, even if it's not what you really want. Right. And I think we're seeing that play out in so many different ways now, that the mass awakening is indeed happening, and it is brutal and it's hard because it's a total teardown of everything else that once was, to be replaced by something new,
right? Which
in fact is something very, very old.
And exactly, that's a perfect way to put it. And you know what else? It's like, if you want change, you have to be okay with change. Like, I swear to God, I bet that's what our angels or archangels are saying more than anything else is, you said you wanted things to change, so we changed them, and now you're mad. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And I think the country is really ready to explode. I think the one thing I'm proud of is I feel like this time I'm finally in the bleachers. I used to always be in the fight. I was always at the protests. I was always, this way. And I think now I'm in the bleachers, and I'm like, hey, everybody's doing their best, and that's where I want to stay. And we're going to take a break, and I have one more thing to add on exactly to what you were saying. Of course I have one more thing. I always have one more thing. That should be, if we do a podcast, it should be called One More Thing. Yes. Okay, hang on. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, this is Lindsay Pandia, and I'm a recovering psychologist. I have over 20 years of experience in the mental health field, but I realize there's so many limitations. I know there are quicker ways to unlock someone's healing potential and traumas, so I stepped away from being a psychologist and took the scary leap to follow my heart and provide spiritual healing full-time. I believe I have a unique perspective that can help you also step into your full potential. I provide one-on-one healing for trauma through shamanic practices, inner child work, shadow work, and so much more. My Inner Child Workshop begins May 4th at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and May 11th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And all of the sessions will be recorded, so if you need to jump in after the workshop begins, just message me. I'd be happy to share them with you. You can learn more about what I offer and connect with me on my website at intuitivepsych.com. That's intuitivepsych.com. Join me, and let's go play with your inner child and see how we can transform your traumas into treasures.
First of all, okay, so before we even got on the phone, we were talking about time going so fast. I can't believe we're in the third segment of this already. You were talking about like the DNA being passed down. The other thing, which I think is the big unplug that is trying to happen now, is tribal beliefs. And I feel like, because you have this new generation that is using pronouns or dressing, like a lot of people don't realize makeup was only worn by men in the beginning. Men wore makeup and women weren't supposed to. And I don't know where that switched. And now we're going back, right? But this generation of do and be what you like is really rebellious. I actually kind of love it. And so they're breaking those tribal beliefs in that way. But it's funny how it comes back to, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but now we have a tribal belief that standing 6 feet away from someone is keeping you safe. Or we have a tribal belief that a mask is changing everything. They could be true, they might not be true. But I feel like we keep getting plugged into these, this is right and this is wrong, instead of just taking each situation a little at a time. And I even hear the tribal beliefs in my head where I'll see something and I'll go, oh, that's not right. And then I'm like, that's fine. Why did you just judge that action or that person? That's fine. Like they are still embedded in there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have visceral reactions to things. And, I'm quickly reminded of that if I ever accidentally click on the timeline function of Twitter, as opposed to just, I'll check in on Twitter a few times a day to check mentions or messages maybe, or to post something. But the second I click onto like a timeline or the trending topics, my tribal beliefs and my visceral reactions, they spike, they escalate. And, I'll come close to being like, you know what, I need to contribute to this. And it's like, well, no, what are you really going to contribute? And something I've really struggled with my entire life is not feeling like I'm smart enough to contribute to the conversation, regardless of what it is.
Which is crazy, because you're one of the smartest people I know. I should meet more people, but you really are.
Yeah, you definitely need to meet more people. But it's one of these things where I've always thought, well, there's somebody who's like much smarter about this than me, so I don't need to chime in. And then, there's, especially in the world today where it's pick a side, extremes on both ends. It's like, well, if you don't speak up, you're part of the problem. Or it's, like, are you going to be on the right side? But there's such situations where if you don't speak up, you're just encouraging like really awful kind of ideology and things like that. And I don't think anyone, well, I'd like to think anyway, trying to give human beings, the benefit of the doubt, that even during history's greatest atrocities, the people that were passively supporting the side of the quote unquote evil they didn't view themselves as being evil. You'd like to think that anyway. Now I'm sure some of them kind of just like lean into the idea. And there is the interesting concept that, if you find the people that are truly in power at the very, very top, and if they understand all of the hidden knowledge that's been kept from the masses, and they understand that death is final, that there is no afterlife, that there's none of this other stuff, right? There's no heaven, there's no hell, et cetera, et cetera. You find people who are 100% in on that belief system. There really is nothing to stop them from doing whatever it is they truly want, regardless of who it hurts or who it affects, because there are no consequences. Other than the moment, right? And if you have people who believe that, and then they're the ones who will do anything to get power, will do anything to accumulate wealth, to control, the only thing they really care about is power and taking care of themselves and their own. And, they can use whatever kind of masks they want to, curry the favor of the people below them, to ensure that they stay in positions of power, because those people will believe that they have their best interests in mind, when at the end of the day, they might know, or at least they believe they know the ultimate truth of the universe, which is a nothingness, right? And so they'll do whatever. There's no real reasoning with a person on that level, although you'd like to think that anyone, no matter how monstrous they may be, the moment they see their firstborn child or grandchild or whatever, that they have a moment of like, wow, there's something magical happening in this universe, because how did this happen? Where does this spark of life come from?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, you know, is the world run by psychopaths? You know, a lot of people think it is.
I do.
But,
I do. I think
but I think
that
one
kind
thing,
of ambition.
yeah, well, yes, I would say, yeah. But I think what we forget is that there are billions of us on this planet, and we're all participating in this game of life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
We're giving them that
And
power.
yes, and there are so many more people that it's ridiculous to even really think about that are not in power. That, I mean, I think the Egyptian Spring was a very good example of, if people simply left their house and walked into the streets in a large number, there is absolutely nothing that small percentage of people can do who are in power.
I love that. And, I had this weird conversation just on a podcast that I taped yesterday that was a month ago. But it's like, was Hitler possessed by a demon or something? No. There's probably a million Hitlers with the same idea. But it is the never saying, okay, like, I feel like this is almost like sort of, I'm getting stumbled on my words here, but like that saying where they came for my neighbor and I didn't say anything, and they came for my other neighbor and I didn't say anything, and now they're coming for me and there's no one to speak for me. That is where I feel like that's the part of mankind that I can't understand, and probably you have trouble understanding, because as comedians, we're anarchists on the outside going, hey, you're doing that wrong. You know what I mean? Like, and we're not always right, and sometimes we're assholes, but I feel like I don't understand that mob mentality. And the other part of that, I had it just there, and my thoughts are getting out of my head so fast. Hold on a sec. Yeah, I do think that people working together, like you were saying, everybody out in the street, but how do we get them there? That's the question. And also,
well, yeah,
I think what this new generation is, and what I feel like the upheaval is right now, is we have really, when Joe Biden won, I said, this is great to find out that an old white man can still win the presidency. Like, it was like, we haven't really moved forward, because we still, whether it's a tribal belief or just what happens, the country moves to, we'll listen to the old white guy, and people can individually say they don't, but the country always turns to the old white guy. And I think the rage right now is, we're learning. We don't have to follow anyone. There isn't really an authority. Do you know what I mean? Am I making any sense? Or should I quit now?
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. And I think that ties into what we're talking about, this mass awakening and this shift is, once people, myself included, realize there's really no one to answer to other than yourself.
Yes.
Now, and there's really no rules in society. And I think the pandemic really woke a lot of people up to that, when some of us already knew that to a certain degree. I mean, to pursue a life in stand-up comedy is to pursue a life outside of the standard rules of what you're supposed to do as a person in America or in the world. You're supposed to go to school, you're supposed to graduate, you're supposed to get a good job, you're supposed to have a family very young.
You're not supposed to be an artist of any time except a graphic artist, because that's the only art that will ever sell.
Exactly. And it's used to sell. So we very much applaud that pursuit as a system, right? And so but here's the catch. I mean, like we were talking about, it's not necessarily that we're special or we're definitely different. And I think the reason that people become different, regardless of who they are, is because they buck against the expectations of the capitalistic society that we live in. And, it doesn't even have to be capitalistic necessarily, it's just society in general. And so, but what I think many of us have grown to understand and accept and I guess on some level, try to be okay with is you don't get a lot of this other stuff that you still want it in your life when you make these choices.
Yes. I think
And
I don't know if I had a
yeah.
family and kids on another timeline, but I don't now. I don't know if that's bad or good.
Yeah. And, and I don't have kids, and I'll be 46 in a week? A week from today. I'll be
Happy
also
birthday.
in the past. So in the past, by the time this airs, I'll be 46 years old. I mean, it's like, I'm pretty sure my window may have just closed very recently, as far as like, I don't have the energy to be running around chasing toddlers around. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll make a great stepdad. But I don't know. That's a complicated thing to even get into, considering. Right. But so I try not to think about that necessarily that much. But I mean, there's always adoption and all kinds of things that most people aren't thinking about on the front of their mind. Anyway, there are sacrifices to be made when you decide very willingly and definitively to live outside of the system at large. And not everybody is willing to make those sacrifices, and that's fine because they make other sacrifices, right? It's just to pick your poison.
Yes, and to inject a question here, because it's like I look at my sister who was a teacher all her life, and now she's retired. Here comes this guy again. This guy is making the wrong choice.
He's making the wrong choice.
He's making the wrong choice on that motorcycle.
You're making the wrong choice.
That's not how we did it when we were kids. So she is now retired and gets a pension and stuff. I don't think I could have done that. I think I would have been a terrible person. And sometimes I look at like my sister and I was like, I'm kind of in admiration. I think that would have, I don't think I could have done that. Like, do you think you could have worked? And I mean that in a positive way. I don't think I'm okay.
Yeah, I also feel envious of, the person who's a homeowner.
Yes.
Who, gets to find joy in, watching their kids go to college. Like a lot of the kids I grew up with, their kids are going to college now. I think we're right around that age where, their kids are, in high schools, moving on to college, probably right now, if I had to guess. And I am envious of that for the main reason because, what if one of my kids was like, a really good athlete? I could just retire early and just live on the high life on my kids' money.
I'm watching my parents in dementia and going, who is going to take care of me? No one is going to take care of me. But
yeah.
But
and I think I haven't really thought of a contingency plan in that regard, but I think it's probably somewhere along the lines of just going to the mountains or the desert and just kind of like that's where I'd end up. I mean, who knows? But or I'll just be I don't even want to think about that right now because I haven't put any thought into it. But so I am envious of many aspects of other people's lives who have made completely different choices than I have, and I'll talk to them from time to time. And we have totally different lives. And, they're envious of
freedom.
I guess my quote unquote freedom. I'm envious of, of the love they've grown inside their inner circle. And listen, I don't come from one of those immediate families that is over the top close with each other. So, I'm sure my brother would, if something happened to me, my brother and sister or whatever would, help take care of me. But at the same time, it's not like I'm not going to bet my life savings that they're going to be happy to do that. I mean, right. I'm sure they would. I shouldn't say that, but
no, I know what you mean.
It is one of those things.
Nobody wants to be a burden. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be a burden. And I think with as much as I, want very specific, large, definitive things to be happening in this world. like disclosure would be one of them, like full disclosure. I don't allow myself as often as I should to remember, hey, this expectation for perfection again is influencing my worldview here. Like in the perfect world, full disclosure happens, fundamental changes occur across the world and across the universe once we realize we're part of an intergalactic neighborhood. And then so I'm like, okay, well, this is that expectation for perfection. This is me wanting it now. Look at the steps that have been taken, that have been, I would say, forced by the paranormal community and people with interest in this. If nobody was ever talking about the paranormal and UFOs and all this other Bigfoot, ghosts, and all these other things, the government, which is just us, which is people, none of that ever would have happened. We wouldn't have even the slightest bit of acknowledgement about anything. So, yeah, there's been positive steps. If you look at where we were 10 years ago, it really deeply bothers me that most of the world needs like mainstream media, like the New York Times or somebody like that, to post an article about UFOs or UAPs for them to be like, okay, this is real now. Yeah. It deeply bothers me.
Or even that the military or the CIA came out. There's something called Project Gateway that the CIA came out with, and I'm so suspicious, like, people, it was the CIA. This didn't leak. Yeah. Nothing leaks by mistake,
Yeah, and it's like, as someone who's in this world, as you well know, it's like on a timer. If a news story breaks about anything in this world that is like becomes super mainstream, the people in your life who aren't into this stuff but know that you are will send it to you as if it's the first time you've heard it.
Yes. There's an article about we're all actually on the wrong astrological sign that I think 100 different people have sent it to me, and I'm like, I can't. Yes.
I can't right now. Yeah. But, and part of me like reacts like, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me right now? Like, but then there's the other part of me, the smaller part, unfortunately, which is like, well, focus on the positive here. They're like seeing this. They sent it to you, which means they found it of some interest. When previously they didn't give, they couldn't care about this stuff really. They just thought it was maybe interesting to talk about this kind of stuff maybe 3 or 4 times a year at like a bonfire or something, right? But now it's a Tuesday in March and they're sending you a link about UFOs. This is progress in a way that shows that the world is waking up. The expectation of perfection is unrelenting and it suffocates all joy out of anything. And so to fight against that is a daily struggle. But it's a beautiful thing when you look at it under the lens of, wow, let's take a closer look at the big picture, which is more people are interested in this now. More people are talking about it. Means more information inevitably will come out because someone who might not have been exposed to this information will now be exposed to it, and it will pique their interest in a way that drives them to pursue a lifetime of research. And that just might be the person who cracks the whole thing open, right? Like a prophecy. Like, it has been written that the child would be born who discovered that the Pentagon has a life after death secret unit division, which of course they do. Yeah. But, but you don't hear about it. You hear about the UFO ones. you don't hear about the Bigfoot secret group, and you don't hear about, the life after death secret group, all those things, which most certainly do exist.
Mm.
But, that's me saying without any evidence whatsoever, but most certainly those do exist. I guess I do have a little evidence actually to say that, but it's exciting in the way to where this is becoming bigger, and there will be a day before long where all of this is normal. It's no longer paranormal.
Yeah.
And we'll have to change the name of our podcasts.
Yes.
It'll be Normal Karen, and it'll be me and Normal You. And I look forward to that day. And I think that day is actually sooner than we think, even though everybody always says that. I do believe it's sooner than we think. And because a lot of people think it's never. And so anything before never is sooner.
And, we might actually be there. I really think there's more of us paranormal than of not. I think we might even be there, or at least maybe in my world. How about that?
Yeah, well, the tipping point. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, did we reach the tipping point, as Malcolm Gladwell would say? And if we're not there, I think it's close.
Yeah.
And I think I can confidently say that. And, just to even feel like you had the smallest part in helping that happen, I think is reward enough. Just to know that, you've been a part of the conversation, and, you've done your best to try to have those conversations in a way that because let's be frank, I'm certainly obsessed with, hyper interested in the paranormal and all things mystical and esoteric. Sure. I would be lying if I didn't admit that I was at the very least hopeful that I helped people, understand something a little better, or become aware of something that they were unaware of before, just by being open and vulnerable about my own experiences. And I think that's the goal in life, isn't it? We all want to find that connection, but we also all want to, accomplish something with our lives. And I don't need to be like remembered as some kind of iconic figure throughout history, because at the end of the day, all statues crumble. So it doesn't even matter in that way to me. But because there's people who didn't even know who Paul McCartney was when he was on the cover of like Vogue or some shit with Taylor Swift. They're like, who's this old guy with Paul McCartney? It's like, if Paul McCartney cannot be remembered in a way that transcends more than 3 generations,
yeah,
it's time to give up the ghost that anybody, specifically in entertainment, right? Is going to be remembered past 3 generations. I mean, how many, what do they call them? Gen Alphas, or I don't know what the newest one is. I think the alphabet has switched over. Would any of them recognize a photo of George Carlin?
Yeah, I know. And you know what else? I feel like my goal with this podcast, and it may be weird, but just for someone else to go, I'm not crazy, or I'm not the only one that thinks like that, because that sort of registers that I would be under the category of not crazy. But you know what I mean? Like, to just have someone listen to your podcast and go, I've always thought this and I was afraid to say it, or this resonates with me. That's all I want, is for someone to not feel alone in this world of thinking of these things.
Exactly. And those are the most rewarding.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, at the end of the day, would you rather have an effect on someone's life in a positive way that therefore lives on potentially forever, right? Because of the effects, the butterfly effect, and just the ongoing changes that occur? Or would you rather have a statue in New York City erected to you in your image that's going to be underwater in 20 years anyway.
Statue. I want the
right?
statue.
You want the statue?
No.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to see if I can buy a corner of land.
Do a Paranormal Karen statue.
Yes. The question is, what material would we build the statue out of? I'm thinking my first initial thought is Play-Doh.
Taffeta.
But I feel
Play-Doh
like I
and
really...
taffeta. Well,
yeah, okay.
You know, that's funny because this is terrible. I'm going to end on a terrible note here. I get that there's tribal land and, poltergeist. You moved the headstones, but not the bodies. And I am like, cremate me, I'm done. Right? Like,
oh, yeah.
Whenever anything is attached to this earth, which probably I should ask somebody that, people that had tribal lands and probably worshiped the earth more. But I'm kind of like, don't worry where I'm buried or don't, I'm done. Burn me up and shoot me into the sky.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully, if I can live long enough, I want to either be two options. The second option I just thought of just now. The first option is bury me naked or whatever with a tree seed or whatever they do.
Yes,
They can do that.
Yep, where you
make me a
fertilize
tree.
Yes.
Let me fertilize a tree. And the second one is cremate me and put me on and scatter my ashes on the moon. Because I love the moon. I'm a crab, so I love. If I had to actually pick a god I worshipped, it would be probably the moon. So it's like, take me to the moon, baby. Take me to the moon. The goddess that controls all tides and all water. Spread me out on the moon, baby. That's where I'd go.
Wow. If anything happens to you, I'll do my best.
I appreciate that. I do appreciate that.
Ryan, I could talk to you forever. Tell everyone whatever is happening, or please really be good to yourself with that break. I think we all need a break, right? We all need a break right now. So just be good to yourself, however that happens. If you can. I feel like every time I say that, there's a pile of work, and then it's midnight, and I go, remember when you were going to find some other joy today? That's not happening.
Yeah, well, one more thing. I've been traveling so much lately, away from home so much lately, that I've had a difficult time keeping up on my podcast and that kind of thing. But I am excited about the future. I do think that the Great Awakening, the shift is, it's underway, and every single person has a part in it, but it's all an individual decision to make. And I do think that we're coming up on, whether it's probably the next, I probably think it'll be the one after, but I think the election in 2028, which I think is the second presidential election that will be ahead of us, if there's still a president at that point.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be probably the great opportunity for a third and fourth party candidate to be coming in, because I think people are growing really tired of everything.
Yeah.
And so I think things are really going to crack open in that way. So I'm looking forward to that. But at the end of the day, I try my best to remain optimistic, and I think there's lots of things to be optimistic about.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is the personal understanding of empowerment. And, it's true. The only thing we can control is our reaction to the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we surrender that power by consuming ourselves with social media or watching television, we are surrendering our ability to understand that we get to control our reactions. Yeah. And I do believe in pacifism. At the end of the day, I don't believe in armed conflict or any of that, but I think it's important to be an active pacifist as opposed to a passive pacifist. So, I think at the end of the day, we have to figure it out. And if we don't, we don't, and that's it. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's peace and understanding that.
You know what? There is. And you know what? This is my optimism because, like I said, my world's been turned pretty upside down. But I do get up and I do write my jokes every day. And I do, have this thing. And my literal optimism is anything can happen. And that's the truth. And, Rodney Dangerfield was discovered at like 60 or, whatever. Or maybe I'll never be discovered, but I'll always be happy just performing. But it's all good. But just knowing anything can happen. That's where we are right now.
You got to choose the life you lived.
Yes.
And you got to pursue the thing you loved because you made that choice.
And that's always a win.
What kind of better life is there? We've been brainwashed into thinking that we're not successful unless we have certain things that other people have decided are the definition of success.
Beautifully said. Oh, Ryan. All right. Where can everybody find you or follow you or please tell them.
Okay. Well, by the time this releases, I'll be on tour. In July, second half of July till the end of August, I've got a lot of tour dates. You can go to ryansingercomedy.com, click on the tour tab, or just do /tour. And you can find me. I'm on, the social medias somewhat. I've kind of disconnected a little bit from social media, but I'm still on there.
Enough to promote dates.
Yes. And I believe that by the time this drops, I should have more information, but we've delayed the release of the stand-up special due to timing as far as they wanted to, they kind of want it to be early October because of the Halloween vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So, which, I wish it would have come out sooner, but I'm also I have fallen behind in my deadlines for editing the series together that accompany the stand-up special. So, But I am hard at work, sequestered, doing such editing, and I'm very excited to show people that, and very thrilled that you were, a big part of it. And that's called The Bridge. So that'll be out later this year.
Be sure that if you're not on my podcast, we can promote here. And actually, I believe in October, you and I might be at the Cambria House.
Yes, we are. We're doing a show together at the Cambria House.
Yeah, that should be so fun.
Yeah, and that is also on my tour calendar. So go to the October month, and you'll be able to find exactly when that is.
And I don't have a tour calendar, but go look for me on Ryan's calendar, because I might be there. My friend, you have a
this was fun as always.
Yes,
my friend.
And wonderful. So hopefully I'll be talking to you before October. But again, thank you for including me in the Post Town. We'll do a Post Town in-person talk in October because it still blows my mind.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we'll have to have you back on my podcast again.
Anytime.
We'll figure that out.
Yes. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. And we will see you all next week.
Paranormal Karen, she's a spooky kind of queen. Paranormal Karen, she's an angel without wings. Comedian, ghost hunter, conscious exploring. She's a funny gal.